Wow, thank you, Ollie, for that introduction. It's a great pleasure to be back in Exeter. I'm really hoping this is going to be the beginning of many times, and the sneak reason is because I'm hoping my daughter gets into Exeter next year. Well, what a great set of presentations we've had this morning. Ollie's been helping you connect with people. One of the things I like to do is connect the ideas, because you're going to get a stream of ideas, not just from me, but from everybody. And already I'm beginning to feel there's some interesting ideas that are percolating, the words like competition, collaboration. And who would have thought we would be talking about nice lawyers? Beautiful presentation, Robert. Really enjoyed that. Very inspiring. So the presentation Drew sent me says, talk about the future of the future, which is about as challenging as it can get. For those of you who saw my presentation a couple of months ago, you're going to see a few of these, but I have a guarantee, or my ambition is, that every single 100% of the people in this room not only learn something new, but feel inspired, excited to go check something else out, and maybe even change the way they're doing things, because we're going to be talking about the why a lot. So, hopefully this will work. There we go. So, question for you. How many of you feel crystal clear on everything that's going on in new tech around the world? Okay, how many of you feel a little bit confused by the number of things that are happening in the world in new tech? All right. That's good, the rest of you are lying. If I had to ask you how many startups are happening every year around the world, and this you can't tell me if you were here 3 months ago. How many startups are happening around the world every year? Give me a number. 5 million. 5 million? You're crazy. How many? Any more? 100 million, and give that woman a prize. There's 100 million startups every year are happening. Of course, some of these involve a lot of mom and pop grocery stores. They're not all new tech, but they are startups. So it's no wonder that we're completely confused about everything that's going on. But where are the great startups happening? Where are these new initiatives happening? And fully half of them every year we look at through the NetExpo Observatory are happening in startups. Here's a surprising idea. 1/3 of them are coming from universities and institutes. So the question I have for you is, are you plugged into some university? Because there's a lot of new innovation happening in universities. But here's the problem. 6% are coming from big corporations. So if you're working in a big corporation, you are stuck in molasses. Everyone's talking about agility and innovation is the heartblood of business. And that's what's happening in big business. It's obviously happening in some law firm, too, somewhere. So when I do these presentations, I often ask, are you excited about all the things that are happening? Right? And then I also ask the other half of the room, are you afraid of anything that's happening in new tech? And usually I get about half and half, and sometimes it's the same people doing both. What about any with you, right? So where are we going? And when I talk, I like to look at this in the bigger context, and we're going to talk about some sociological phenomena that are going along. So really the human condition has always been to understand where we are, who we are in this world, and somehow to master it. That's why we love science. Science's role is to help quantify the world. Max Planck, the brilliant German physicist who won the Nobel Prize in 1918, he said that only that which can be measured is real. Anything real can and should be turned into data. There's so much data that's being produced now. It's absolutely phenomenal. The manufacture and process of data, it's surrounding us like some kind of tsunami, and most of us are underneath that wave. So the issue is you got all this data that's being produced, and it's being on everything, everywhere, all the time, by everybody. And it's just an overwhelming concept. But that's some need that we have in us to understand, to master, and to use this data for a better purpose. If you distill the digital revolution, this is a way to understand. The digital revolution is actually all about transforming everything into data to transform everything through data. This is one way of looking at this whole digital transformation. And this transformation, this change process is really at the heart of the problems that most of us businesses are having. So if this is our ambition to transform everything through data, then these are the questions. How? Who by? Who for? What for, or maybe otherwise known as the why? And then underneath all this, who controls all the data? These are some of the big issues we have, and I'm going to be talking about some of the ethical quandaries that we have faced us. If some of you might have a more negative or scared approach to the things that are happening in new tech, I have a rather more humanistic and hopefully more positive view on the things that are happening in new tech, because I hope that we are going to be able to use this new tech for the better good. Protagoras, the Greek philosopher who was a sophist, he said, "Man is the measure of all things." And I like to think of the man maybe even more, especially in today's world, the woman is the measure of all things. And the ability for us to be the ultimate reference point. We need to know that we are operating, we have agency. We are voting members of the democratic country. We have the opportunity to act, and we need to remember that. We are not victims of the things that are happening around us all the time. So if I have this idea of maybe an era of humanism 2.0, it is the idea that we can do things through positive thinking, that we can use science and this new technology to solve the big problems of our world, whether they are environmental or health-wise or social or economic. So the keys to your business and hopefully why and how you can bring it into what you're doing is to future-proof your business. And I have 3 in this book that I've co-wrote with my great co-author who just came down for this, Caleb Storkey. To future-proof your business, there are 3 things which are super important to instill into what you're doing. The first is meaningfulness. Find your north, know why you're in business, and add more purpose to what you're doing. Second is a sense of responsibility. This is not just responsibility for the planet, but it is self-responsibility. And the third of them is collaboration, which we've used the word a number of times. But it's not just collaboration and work together with the people in the team, because that's just basic. It's working and learning to figure out how to collaborate with all your stakeholders. So I'm going to whiz you through 15 initiatives that come from around the world that explicit people that are doing this kind of stuff, meaningful, responsible, and collaborative work around the world. And hopefully these will be inspiring you. And watch out, this is going to be a wicked tour. And I'll have at the end a slide with all the names, so you can just take a photograph of that if you want to capture it all. So let's talk about meaningfulness. Meaningfulness is what? Well, it's having a sense of purpose, getting out of bed and jumping and not feeling, oh God, I got to go to work. Have that why innate in you, not just because you're the founder, but you're a part of a team. You know the why. And you're trying to fight this thing that the New York Times called moral blindness. We have to have a stronger sense of purpose in what we're doing, not just to make money like on Wall Street. In fact, the good news is that in a study that was reported in 2013 by the Harvard Business Review, over 15 years, those companies that had this sense of purpose, meaningfulness, they call it the firms of endearment, had an over 10 times return on the stock market. So actually, being meaningful is good for business. So as we talk about this, I'm going to look at some more human ideas, some more human initiatives that I think are extremely exciting. So the first is Yili Maitian. Yili Maitian. So this is like the Danone of China, if you don't know it. They sell healthy food and yogurts and the like. And what they've done is they've created a system where you're on a bus, you're commuting to work like this, and you just hold on to the handle there, and they have connected these handles so that as you're standing there, they also figure out your heartbeat, whether you've got a good sense of balance when it comes over, and a few other items, so that if they see any anomalies, they send you a little alert to your phone via NFC, and if there are any solutions that they happen to sell, they'll also provide you that. Yili Maitian. So how many of you guys have kids? All right, keep your hands up. How many of you guys are loving the way your kids are texting and using social media? Okay, a few less. You sir, are one out of a crowd. So I have a couple of kids, and I know that there's some issues about the kinds of things, texting, sexting, and such. So Oiti out of Switzerland, what they've got is an application. You work it with your child, and anytime the child decides to post something with a little bit too much skin, the app, through the chat, will identify, hey, Alexandra, that looks like a little bit too much, naughtiness, or it's a word that I don't recommend you use, and if you use it again, I'm going to come back. And when I come back, I'm going to be a little bit stronger in my wording. And by the way, if you do it a third time, I'm going to tell Papa. Papa not happy. Oiti. So this was a little bit stronger. This is the Pavlok wristband from the UK. So here it is. Anyone? You guys do New Year's resolutions? Anyone? You good on those? or nobody's good on them. A lot of people do them, but this is, January 3rd, we've already sort of lost the plot. So what you do is you tell your little wristband, hey, listen, these are the things I want to stop. These are bad habits that I don't need to have anymore. And you identify these habits, and you also identify the pain level you'd like to go for. And so as you're going along, let's say for sake of argument, I mean, obviously not you, but I mean, like at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling a little bit hungry, roll downstairs, and you go to the kitchen. It knows you're in the kitchen, and then it knows you're actually in front of a thing called the fridge. There's a sensor on the fridge, and when it sees the fridge door opening, it just gives you a little shock. Between 50 and 255 volts. And it gets stronger as you keep the door open. Havelock wristband. So this is a little bit more meaningful here. This is iPoly, A-I-P-O-L-Y, from Australia. What they've done is I don't know if you have any friends who are blind, but it's a real travesty for these people to have this issue. And there's another great project I want to mention called Blind Spot. It's a socially connected walking stick that helps blind people not be the victim of someone else seeing them, but they can see other people through the socially connected walking stick. iPoly allows you to see what's happening. So if I take a photograph of you, then it will identify what's in the photograph and tell me what's there. And they're now working on contextualizing and saying what's happening between the objects that I identified in your photograph. So bringing vision to blind people, iPoly. So the first was meaningfulness, and the second is responsibility. And we have tremendous need for great responsibility. There are 4 different areas that we need to be applying our sense of responsibility. The first one is the most important in our view, and that is ethics. We have enough issues and headlines that you know it's bad for business to be unethical. And yet people continue to do it. But we think that it's important that we have our own self-responsibility with regard to our ethics. The second one is continuous learning. We need to have responsibility ourselves for continuous learning. So many companies rely on their learning for development department. But there is nobody in the world who knows better what you need than you yourself. And there's so much information out there, we need to take responsibility, grab the bull by the horns, and learn. Third is personal branding. Can't delegate this. I love agencies, but you can't delegate your personal branding to an agency. It's about who you are, your personality. And the final one, a little bit more scary, and this is in the area of cybersecurity. Companies tend to say, well, we'll just put up a firewall. We'll get in the security system. This is not how you're going to protect yourself. The weakest link to your business is you. So you need to take personal responsibility for the way you protect yourself. And you've got to watch out for that little USB key that your son says, hey, Pa, would you mind printing out, this is my new school report? And you say, sure, son. You take it to work, and then the worm is in. But we're talking about ethics, and in biology, this is an important part of the science, and understanding our world around us. And it used to be that when we looked at biology, we kind of, in the procreation, we have a male and a female that makes this new baby, and each of these babies have on average 17 anomalies that the male and the female have put together, have created 17 anomalies. And some of these are good, and some of these are neutral, and some of these are not so good. And Darwin called this the selection, the natural selection, process of natural selection. And we've sort of been living that. But now we have so many great new techniques that are allowing us to explore, analyze, and understand, sometimes master what's going on in biology. We have CRISPR that's now looking for being able to read our genetic code for under $100. And now we're in this moment where we're able to actually elaborate our strength in our biology to be able to put our will onto what we want to create out of the gene. So we're talking ethics, and we have the opportunity, though, to be inspired by the power of nature. So here are a few projects that I've identified as mimicking nature. And the first one is from the United States. And so, dogs have this great snout, right? We don't know how to do that, but what they've done is they recreated the snout of the dog through 3D printing. And it actually, by mimicking the shape and the behavior of the snout, it improves dramatically the ability of artificial smelling. As such, they're hoping that to create a new troop of dogs that are able to do the kind of work that they do in buildings to look for people, to detect explosives or find drugs. in the airport. Then we know we have a problem with bees, right? We're depleting our bee population in the world. There are two great initiatives, one in the States and one in Japan, to use the drone technology to create little bees that can go around and pollinate and do the work that we no longer have the troops for. So that's the robotic bee. And right now they're hoping the next step is going to be to create autonomous robotic bees. So we talked about mimicking, but what about correcting nature? I mean, because nature's not all perfect. So this is out of Pakistan in a co-work with some United States professors. And what they've got is called a cow collar. And you put the connected collar around the cow, and it's able to detect what's going on in terms of some of its important bio materials, the readings. And when there are any issues, they are alerted ahead of time, because until now, cows still can't tell that they have a problem. Speak. That was funny, no? Note to self, bad joke. All right, so you like burgers, I have vegans and vegetarians, but how about this one? I don't know if this is vegetarian. Impossible Burger. What they're doing is they're going to recreate the burger they're going to recreate without having to use cows, burgers. For those of you who like wine, they got a new one in San Francisco. It's called Ava Winery. They're going to do the same thing, but for wine. So you don't even have to grow the wine, store the wine. You just make the wine you want. How cool is that? They're hoping to have the new first bottle in 2017, at the end of this year. Or how about Modern Meadow? It's a $100 billion business, the raw leather business. And so these guys are trying to create vegan leather using DNA, then they reconstruct, and then they are able to weave together and make this new leather. It's a synthetic leather. Humans helping humans through technology. This is out of Germany. We have such an issue in Europe, especially on the mainland, with refugees. And so these guys recognize, these two individuals in Germany have identified the issue that a lot of these refugees don't have access to higher education. In fact, only 1% of them do. So they've created an online platform that allows for 1,500 refugees to get education. So this is technology being used for good purpose. And in Sweden, the BIT nation, the refugee emergency response. This is using the blockchain and the Bitcoin to help, in the one case, with identity, which they don't necessarily have, and second of all, give them a bank charge card using the Bitcoin. The final chapter is collaboration. And this is really this notion that we need to work together. We need to figure out why we're doing this together, and we need to put our little defensive mechanisms away and start working together. Some great examples, it's like Ford with Lyft, we're seeing Dexmo Robotics in China. This is an exoskeleton that you put on top of your hand, and using virtual reality allows you to mimic, understand, sometimes play games. They're using it in very different ways. And it's the combination of technologies that are being used. This is the collaboration that you need. And so they're using it for training, they're using it for video games, they're using it for medicine. If you have an issue with some kind of difficulty with your hand, you're able to retrain it, looking at the virtual reality and understand, thanks to the exoskeleton that's doing the work, to help you regain some muscle mass in your difficult hand. In the same vein, out of Sweden, this is for people who are missing an arm. People who are missing an arm often have this thing called phantom pain. And so you don't even have the arm, but the pain is there, and it's very hard to get away, and you use a lot of drugs. So these guys have developed a system using augmented reality, where they can actually see their arm as if it's working again. And they can rewire their brain, the neural networks in the brain, to get rid of the pain. As such, they dramatically, 50% reduction in pain, and a huge lot less of painkillers needed. This is meaningful collaboration. And the last one, and it's a project that was a few years ago, but I love it because I need to say it, and it's not just because we had a little Lego thing going on this morning. I planned this ahead of time. It's called Creative Prosthetic, and it's out of Denmark. And this guy, Carlos Torres, he was teaching kids, and one of the kids in his class, Dario, was missing an arm, and he had a prosthetic arm. It was made by some very well-meaning adult doctors, but the arm just looked like a bloody prosthetic arm that was made by adults for adults. It happened to be made for this kid. So he said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to change that all around. So using 3D printing, made the prototypes, and he made an arm that was able to be affixed onto the kid's arm, and on top of that, add any type of toy that he wanted. So his arm went from being a prosthetic arm to a toy. But this is the thing, he used to be teased by the kids, how you have that bad arm, you're missing an arm. You know how kids can be so lovely to each other, right? And so this is the cool thing that this professor did. He said, how many of you guys like Lego? A lot of people like Lego, especially the kids. Would you guys all be willing to give one piece of your Lego set to help him have his arm back? So everyone gave one piece of the Lego. Everyone can sacrifice one piece of Lego. And all of a sudden, it became their arm, not his arm. And so he was able to create all the types of toys, whether it was the sword or Freddy the Dragon or like a crane to go pick up stuff. It was the coolest arm in town. So here's the thing. If you have insight and you know how to collaborate, you can make great things happen. That's it. Meaningfulness, responsibility, collaboration. I hope you've enjoyed the process. This is the list if you want to take a photograph of the items that I showed. And I'm very glad to have Paul, who's here, should you be willing. I've got my book, The Future Proof, which I'll be very happy to sign with Caleb, who's here, talking about these things and how we can future-proof our business in the future. And also, just for anyone who's living in London, a quick plug. The Last Ring Home, I'm doing one last screening in London on Wednesday. Should you be wishing, come and see it. I got a couple of professors really talking about meaningfulness. This is the story of my life. Thank you for your time.